Same forests, same vision. That's the goal of Vaagen Brothers Lumber, who regularly stands on the same side of forest issues as environmental groups, one of conservation and overall forest improvement. From legislative initiatives to involvement in groups such as the Northeast Washington Forestry Coalition and daily efforts to protect and improve our forest lands through active stewardship, forest health is the crux of Vaagen Brothers operations.
Our philosophy and my philosophy for forest management and sustainability as a business and as a forest in terms of making sure that the forest is sustainable for the long term is a philosophy that's based in looking at things from a holistic perspective. So you don't look at it for what's going on right now in the short term and the impacts, but what's going to happen the next generation and the following generation. And what are your actions going to look like when you leave? Not only 10 years from now or 20 years from now, because we all know that if you clear cut a forest, it grows back. But if you do it right, you can have products and you can have a forest that looks good a week after you left it. And I think that's the basis of the philosophy. And then, beyond that is just doing the right thing, having integrity, being able to look yourself in the mirror every day and say, you know what, I'm doing something that's good, and my family business is something to be proud of. And we enjoy coming to work. We enjoy providing people a place to work where they can also look themselves in the mirror and say, I'm part of something that's big here and bigger than me, and we're working in a direction that is beneficial for everyone, and I feel good about that. So.
Collaboration was the driving force behind the formation of the Northeast Washington Forestry Coalition, a group who strives to keep lines of communication strong between all forest stakeholders. At the group's core are issues related to forest health, public safety, and community economic vitality. Northeast Washington Forestry Coalition board members like Dave Heflick and Coalition President LLOYD McGee meet regularly to discuss ongoing forest restoration topics, including fuel reduction, protection against fire, and community education efforts.
Well, do you think that we can get the conservation community to look at these large diameter stands and agree that we're going to protect the large diameter trees that are in the old growth category by removing the small diameter trees underneath, and taking away the latter fuels? Isn't that a good thing? Could we get agreement?
I think we have probably more opportunity for that today than we've ever had. We increasingly have scientists that the conservation movement has always looked to, like Jerry Franklin, talking about, particularly in these warm, dry stands, a lot of that's what these are. That because of fire suppression, we have way too much stuff in the understory, and that if we don't get that stuff out of there and the fire comes through, it's going to be lighter fuels and take it right up into the crowns of those big trees. The burning issue is, how do we go about doing that in such a way that we get the stand thinned out, we reduce the chance of having a crown fire in there, but we don't screw things up with too many roads, too much compaction. So I really think that the place to find common ground in those units is going to be on how the logging is done in there. How is the thinning done? Can we do it over frozen ground? Can we do it without building roads? I think those will be the places where we can explore for the biggest chance of finding common ground.
Well, let's go out there with the coalition and conservation community representatives and have that discussion out there and see if we can find that common ground with the Forest Service representatives available too.
As Vice President of the Northeast Washington Forestry Coalition, Russ Vaagen is a proponent for forest health in the region and as far away as Washington, D.C.
I've gone to Washington, D.C. with Mitch Friedman with Conservation Northwest and Tim Coleman also of Conservation Northwest. And they've opened doors into offices in D.C. that I probably wouldn't have been able to get into, and they've added credibility to some of the statements that we make as far as our forest utilization practices and wanting to do good fuels reduction projects out in the forest, and really start talking to the point where I can appreciate and understand their desire to preserve and protect certain areas of the forest, and I can go and talk to the politicians and their staff about protection in terms of wilderness or in terms of roadless areas, and they in turn have a new appreciation for how forests can be utilized and managed. So they can go in and now talk about how we need to utilize the material from the forest, provide economic value to the communities and the mills, and treat the forest as it needs to be treated, and a byproduct of that will be product of the mills and viability of the communities. And so by going in and having the opposite end of the spectrum, if you will, start talking in favorable terms of what the other had been looking for in the past, you start to see that things really can happen. And the politicians start to go, well, this isn't a polarizing issue, why don't we do something about it? And they started to, and the reception we've got in Washington, D.C. has been very positive, and we're going to continue to have a presence there and work with the politicians to get the Forest Service and other issues resolved.
Right now we're working on a number of stewardship projects on federal land where we've actually been thinning out the sick and suppressed trees from the dense stands, and those trees, in addition to helping the forest become healthier, also make good lumber. So it's a pretty good win-win situation. There's definitely some synergies formed there. As long as the Forest Service can continue to put up these stewardship projects, we'll continue to buy them, and we remove the overcrowded trees, and then the money that's generated is used to do other forest health type projects.
I think in the past there's been some differences between many people in the groups, whether it be conservationists or foresters or loggers or whoever. We see the conservation communities coming together from the Northeast Washington Forestry Coalition, bringing themselves to the table along with members of the community and foresters and all trying to agree together on collaborative projects. We hope that the Forestry Coalition here in Northeast Washington will be one of many scattered throughout Washington, Oregon, and Idaho, but we seem to be, at this point, the blueprint for these forestry coalitions, and certainly the environmental community has been a big part of that whole change of bringing some different ideas and different thoughts into making that happen.